Hello, Buddy Crow, back again, and I recently finished Shenmue II, but before I get into that, I want to address something that I was doing in my last video on Shenmue, and that is that I was mispronouncing Ryo's name occasionally during that video, and some people called me out on it, so I promise you, in this video, I will not mispronounce Ryo's name at all. Oh, god damn. Alright, all kidding aside, let's get into Shenmue 2. Now, there's actually two different versions of Shenmue 2. There's a Dreamcast version and an Xbox version. And I wound up playing the Xbox version. The main reason for that is because the Xbox version was the only version released in the US. Microsoft, I think, bought up the rights from Sega for it to be an Xbox exclusive, hence why it says only on Xbox at the top. So it couldn't be released in the Dreamcast in the US. Yeah, they're still doing that kind of crap to this day, but and I wanted to play an official US version since one was released here, so that's the main reason I played it on the Xbox. Now, the Xbox version was also released in Europe, but it was never released in Japan. Only Japan got the Dreamcast version. So what I want to do first is kind of go over what the differences were between the Xbox version and the Dreamcast version. Now, mind you, I haven't played the Dreamcast version. This is just kind of details I looked up. The first is that the Xbox version actually includes an additional DVD, if you get it complete, Shenmue the movie. And it's an hour-and-a-half movie of the events of the first game, really cut right from the game itself. Additionally, there's a digest movie on the game. It's like a 15-minute video of the cutscenes from the first game. That helps you get caught up as well. And I watched that as well. That is pretty interesting. So there's really two ways to get caught up. There's the long way and the really short way, the 15-minute digest version, they call it. Now, as for the rest of the stuff, it's pretty much the same graphics. It's just a higher resolution on the Xbox. As for the audio, it should be almost exactly the same as the Dreamcast. The only difference is that the Xbox version is the only way to play the game with the audio dubbed into English. The Dreamcast version has only Japanese dialogue where you could have English subtitles, whereas in the Xbox version, you have that option to do the English dub as well. And that's the way I played the game because that's how I played the first one, so I kind of played it similarly to the way I played the original Shenmue. Going on to controls, the controls are pretty much exactly the same between the Dreamcast and the Xbox version. They have the same buttons pretty much. The only difference is that even though the buttons are labeled the same, the colors are different. So in the game, those colors are changed to reflect the Xbox controller. Also, in the Xbox version, I don't know if this is in the Dreamcast version, but there's an option to change the analog stick from looking around to actually moving Ryo, which I was like gonna jump on right away, but for some reason it didn't quite work the way I expected. So I went back to the original control scheme, which I was used to anyway because I played through Shenmue 1 that way, and I was just used to it, so I continued that way. Another difference is that there's quicker load times in the Xbox version. There's less frame rate drops. And since the Xbox has some extra buttons, they use some of those buttons for color filters, and another button to do camera. So, like, anytime during the game, you hit the black button and you'll take a picture. What was kind of cool about that is that you could look at these pictures later on and see information about the characters that you've taken pictures of. And additionally, it gives you an added quest to try and take pictures of all the characters. I think you actually unlock something for that. The only annoying thing about the camera feature is that they felt the need to stick a little camera icon on the screen anytime you're able to take a picture. But that's like pretty much the whole game, so that camera icon is stuck on the screen for the entire game for the most part.
Watch where you're going, you punk!
That goes for you too, barging into people like that.
But the one really big downside in the Xbox version is that you can't utilize your save data from the original Shenmue, and that's mostly because there was no Xbox version of Shenmue. But you know, I really didn't see it as that much of a big deal because you're gonna get most of the items you would have gotten anyway in the first game, starting off in the Xbox version. The only difference is the money. And that is kind of a moot point, and I'm sorry if I'm spoiling things a little bit here, but like within the first hour of the game, you're going to get robbed.
I had my bag stolen.
Now, I didn't know that, and you'll get all your stuff back, but except all your money. You'll basically start within an hour of the game, you'll have no money. Now, there's kind of ways around that you can buy a lot of capsules and sell them back later, but if you don't know that, you're just going to start the game with no money anyway.
I'll have some more fun.
Now, another fairly obvious thing that I'm going to point out is that the game on the Xbox is on one DVD compared to the 4 GD-ROMs that were on the Dreamcast version, which means less disc swapping. In fact, no disc swapping on the Xbox at all.
Yes, that's right.
Now, the rest of this video is just really going to be a comparison of Shenmue 1 to Shenmue 2. Because if you played Shenmue 1, you're going to feel right at home playing Shenmue 2. It's very similar, just minor tweaks here and there. Now, one thing I noticed almost within a couple hours of playing the game is that Shenmue 2 is a much bigger game than the original Shenmue. Shenmue only occurs in one chapter of the entire Shenmue series, and that whole chapter takes place in Yokosuka, Japan. Whereas Shenmue 2 actually contains 3 chapters. The first of those chapters taking place in Hong Kong, then after Hong Kong you go to Kowloon, and then after Kowloon you wind up in Guilin area. Now, the Hong Kong and Kowloon areas in of themselves, separately, seem to me bigger than the original Shenmue game as a whole, with the Guilin area basically being an hour or two long and serving as a bridge between the end of the 3rd chapter and the beginning of the 5th chapter, which should be starting with Shenmue 3.
Japan is pretty small compared to China.
Is it far from here?
Well, actually, it's kind of far.
A faraway country to the east.
Now, even though the climax of the game happens at the end of the 3rd chapter, and the 4th chapter is really just some walking and a few quick time events thrown in there that only last between an hour or two, it is a very, very important part of the story, because that is where we get a lot of information, including what Shenmue actually is and who that girl is that actually appears in the beginning of the intro of Shenmue and Shenmue 2. I mean, you play the whole game Shenmue, you don't know what Shenmue is, you don't know who that girl is, and then you have to actually play it to nearly the end of the 2nd game to find all that out. But once you do, it's like you're starting to put all the pieces of the story together.
Alright?
I'm okay.
And now another thing that I'll point out is that I felt it was a lot easier to relate to Ryo in the 2nd game than it was in the 1st game. The reason for that is that in the 1st game, Ryo had an established life. He already knew the people and places, but as for me, the player, I didn't know those things. So there was kind of a disconnect between, the character I was controlling and what the character was supposed to be. You're talking to people, I've never seen these people before, but Ryo knows them. Whereas in the 2nd game, he shows up in Hong Kong by himself. He's a stranger to that land and everything is new to him. But it's also new to us, the people that are playing the game. So it's easier to relate to him because everybody we see is brand new and every place we see is brand new. So in that sense, it was easier to relate to Ryo in this game than it was in the original game.
Try asking in some other quarter, like the Lucky Charm quarter or the South Command quarter.
I understand. I'll do that.
Other changes between the 2nd game and the 1st game. Now, I don't know if this is this feature is only to the Xbox version or if it was included in the Dreamcast version as well, but you could save any time that you wanted, anytime and anywhere. You just have to go to the menu, select save, and you're good to go. In the original Shenmue, you actually could pause the game, so to speak, but you had to leave the Dreamcast on to resume the game. You had to save specifically in your bedroom, but here you can save anytime and anywhere. Now, I had to use that to my advantage. I didn't want to, but I did, and I'll get to that. But yeah, you could save anytime you wanted to. I think between Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2, the voice acting is slightly improved, but you still get dialogue like this.
How about a game? It's $50 a game, and the rule is...
I don't have the money!
Oh. Please come again.
Also, the HUD display on the screen is slightly different from the second game to the first game. The clock itself was moved to the upper right-hand corner, and where it was down in the corner is now an indication of what all the buttons are on the controller and what they do at any time via the icons that appear on them. Now, each of the main things about Shenmue also return in Shenmue II, and I'll just kind of cover those slightly. First is like the quest, the actual investigation and everything. And that's pretty much the same thing, except we get two more things that appeared in the game. One is the ability to follow people. And sometimes if you're looking for some place to go and you'll talk to somebody, that person will say, hey, I'm heading that direction. If you want, you could follow me. And it's kind of funny because then it kind of turns into this first-person view where you're following the person. But some of those people move so slow that you're like, come on, move it already. And they'll just kind of trot along. You go from screen to screen. But it sometimes can help save you time if you don't know where to go. You just, I guess you put the controller down and just sit there and wait. But at least that option is there and you're not stuck like looking all over the place for something. And the other thing is a wait option. Sometimes, like even in the first game, if somebody told you that, hey, meet me here at 6 p.m. and it was noon, you had to actually sit there and wait for 6 hours game time before that event would take place. However, in this game, if somebody will say, meet me at this place at sundown. Now, if you go to that place and it happens to be noon, an option will show up that'll say that you could wait, and time will just fast forward until the appropriate time you're supposed to meet that person. Now, you could actually spend that time doing some other stuff, maybe training or earning money or something, but if you don't need to, that's a good option to help speed the game along. Now, another thing returning are the free battles, and to me this felt pretty much the same as it was before. No more difficult or no easier than it was before. However, sometimes when you're fighting a group or there's certain scenarios that the game wants to put you in, the camera kind of flips around to behind Rio, and that kind of got a little bit annoying because all of a sudden it's changing the buttons on you, changing which direction. I was never really sure which way I was supposed to press. Free battles themselves, also as in Shenmue 1, the camera could kind of get stuck in an odd spot, could be zoomed too close in, you don't know where people are. So, it's kind of the same problems, but with the added problem of having the camera like whip around Rio and changing the controls up on you sometime. Also, quick time events make come back in this. Of course, it's one of the core features of Shenmue. And I actually found them a bit easier in this game than in the original Shenmue. Although, I'm not sure if that's just because I'm more familiar with the color coding on the Xbox controller than on the Dreamcast controller, or if they've actually given me a little bit more time to input my buttons than the original game. But they also threw in these combination QuickTime events, where the action will just pause on the screen and it'll show you a D-pad and your buttons, and show you a combination that you have to enter in. And you have to enter in that combination before time is up in order to pass. Well, what threw me off is that first time this happened, I was totally not expecting it, and I failed, and I failed, and I failed, until I eventually got a hang of it. And eventually, during the course of the game, I did get a hang of it to where I could actually successfully pull it off the first couple times I'd see it. But, yeah, it kind of threw me off for a loop the first time I saw it, because I was not expecting it.
Some nerve to trip me like that.
Also, returning is training to improve your moves. Yeah, I did that more this game than I did in Shenmue, and I think it really did help me out later in the game, because I had less problems fighting than I did in the original game.
Very sharp.
Also returning from Shenmue is the ability to learn new moves through being trained through some character in the game. Now, in the original game, your trainer would just basically tell you the buttons to input and would ask you if you'd like to try it again and again and again. But here, they added a little bit more variety. I think that does appear in the game, but they also threw in some mini games that you had to do to learn the move, or sometimes having to do the move in the middle of a fight in order to truly learn it. And finally is money. I think that money is way more important in Shenmue 2 than it ever was in the original Shenmue. You need money to pay for the hotel that you're staying at part of the game. It's like $38 a day. Now, if you don't pay your hotel bill, it's not that big of a deal. It's just that the guy who's running the desk at the hotel won't give you any information unless you've paid your tab. And I read that you can get away with not paying anything because, you know, it's only a portion of the game where you're actually at that hotel and you have to pay to stay every night. But you also need money to purchase maps. Now, maps are very, very, very useful in the game. I mean, you could, in theory, get away with playing the game without a map, but it really, really helps put things in perspective of where you are and where you're going. And later on, when you're in the Kowloon area, there's all these huge towers, and each tower has maps as well as the quarters around the area. And yeah, it's just really helpful to know where those stairs and elevators are in those buildings.
Black Heaven building. Good.
And also, later on in the game, it turns out you need quite a substantial amount of money to enter in these street fights that you need to enter in order to progress the story of the game. And it's actually at this point in the game at which I took advantage of the save feature. I'll talk more about earning money, and I'll explain how I kind of abuse that. So there's really 4 ways to earn money. And the first is through pawn shops. Now, I really didn't use the pawn shops. I guess if you buy a bunch of capsules, you could return to the different pawn shops in the game that buy them back for different prices, and you could kind of sell them back and kind of make a profit that way. I didn't really do that. And then there's jobs in the game, of which I really only found 2 different types of jobs in the game. One of them is moving crates, which is kind of a really poor substitute for forklift driving in the original Shenmue. That's the one thing in the original Shenmue that I missed in this game, was forklift driving. Instead, you get a job moving crates. And this is pretty terrible, I think, because it doesn't make any sense. Basically, you're helping this other guy move a crate across the room. And in theory, it should be pretty simple. You basically lift up the crate and he tells you a direction to go, and you push that direction. If he doesn't say anything, you push forward. Should be really simple, except it doesn't make any sense because it seems like when you could go straight back, he's randomly telling you to go left and right, and he's purposely wobbling that crate back and forth. It makes no sense, and then it gets to the point to where he's like telling you left, left, and then you have to push left twice. And then occasionally, if you get far enough, he's like left, 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 left. And I swear it does not give you enough time to hit the buttons enough times. And you wind up dropping the crate a lot.
Left, 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 left! Push the number of times that I tell you!
But when you hit the second area of the game, the guy you're carrying crates with is even more insane. And he goes all over the place. I can never get any more than 5 crates done with that guy.
Left, 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 left! Push in the direction Congo say for the same number of times!
And that's where I kind of just lost it and found an alternative method to earning money, which I'll get to later. The second job was actually running a Lucky Hit stand. Now, the Lucky Hit stand is actually also part of another way you could earn money through gambling, but if you're running the stand, the shop owner gives you a bunch of money to start out with, and you have to call people. And this drove me crazy, because you're basically standing there yelling.
How about trying Lucky Hit? How about a game of Lucky Hit? How about trying Lucky Hit? How about a game of Lucky Hit?
Overall, I didn't feel like it was a good value of my time to run a Lucky Hit stand. Because if you wind up with less money than the guy gives you, you don't wind up getting any money. But if you wind up winning money, you get half of the money that you won from the amount of money that he gives you to begin with. And there was no way to leave Lucky Hit for hours once you started it. You have to wait for the owner to come back and then tell him you didn't want to do it anymore. So I found running a Lucky Hit stand to be even more annoying than moving crates.
How about trying Lucky Hit?
Another way to earn money was through street fights. Now there's just these people that are hanging around areas, and you could earn money either through arm wrestling or just other certain kind of little street fighting mini games, like, you know, hitting a person. You know, have 5 chances to hit this person, so they fall over, or you're trying to avoid being grabbed, or you're trying to grab this other guy. I thought it was a good variety of things, although I didn't really do a whole lot with that.
Steady, brother.
And then finally, you could earn money through gambling. And there were a bunch of little games like playing high and low, and there was this other weird one with a bowl called Flower, Bird, Wind, and Moon. I didn't really find those games too interesting. I know there were a lot more games in Shenmue II that I did not encounter or play. The one that's all over the game is Lucky Hit. Now, I touched on this when you could get a job running a Lucky Hit stand. But when you get to the Kowloon area, there's like a Lucky Hit museum with all these different Lucky Hit tables. And the way I earned a lot of money in the game when I finally got fed up with moving crates was that I played the one table that it cost $100 to play, but if you win, the payout is $1,000. So what I would do is actually save the game before playing it, play it, and if I lost, I would just reset the game. And if I won, I would save the game and continue until I eventually earned like $10,000, at which point I was like, finally, I'm done worrying about money. I could actually just play the game without worrying about money.
Very good technique, like a pro. Here are your winnings.
So yeah, that's pretty much Shenmue II. It's pretty much the same thing as Shenmue 1, except expanded like many times over. There's so many areas in the game to explore, and I know there's so many hidden rooms, and if you look at like the secrets on the game, you can see, oh, if you go to this building on this floor in this room, you'll see something. If you go here and here and here, you'll see something. And I just was kind of following the game. I really didn't explore that much, and it did take me quite a while to get through it. But it is more worthy to go through Shenmue 2 a second time than it is the original Shenmue. There's a lot more to see in the game that I know I didn't see. And overall, I found it less frustrating than the original Shenmue with the quick time events and the free battles. Of course, I failed some of that stuff again and again and again. I really didn't feel like it was the game's fault. I felt like really that it was my fault. Although, the final real boss battle against Don Yu in the game, it really took me about half an hour to beat him, because not only did I have to figure out how to beat him in a free battle fight, this big huge guy that was constantly grabbing me, not only did I have to do that, there were a bunch of quick time events after that, and if you fail one of those quick time events, you're back to fighting him again. So yeah, and I also think that the storyline set pieces are excellent. There's times in the game where you're doing things that you're like, wow, this is kind of cool that I'm doing this, like having to listen to all these cassettes for clues.
And in the news today, police are searching for 2 men who apparently broke into the herbal medicine store Great View Herbs in Kowloon's Great View building.
And just following somebody around, trying to sneak around, find out where they're going and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of cool.
Hey, you're getting too close. Stay back.
But my personal favorite was near the end of the 3rd chapter, where you're in the Yellowhead building and you're being chased around by Yuan with a chainsaw. Now that is what I'll remember the most from Shenmue 2.
You aren't getting away!
Especially the couple times where I failed the quick time event and she killed me with a chainsaw. You don't see it, but really, she throws a chainsaw at you, and I thought that was pretty damn cool.
Oh, man.
Too bad, isn't it?
So yeah, I highly recommend Shenmue 2. Now, if you haven't played Shenmue or Shenmue 2, you could, in fact, jump into Shenmue 2 with just watching the digest movie. But if you haven't played either game, I'd still recommend playing the original Shenmue first. If anything, it'll just get you more acclimated to what the game is about, how it controls, and what to expect. Because going from Shenmue 1 to Shenmue 2, you just slide right into it. And you'll have a better understanding of what's going on if you actually play through Shenmue completely. So yeah, now that I've completed Shenmue 2, I can truly look forward to Shenmue 3. But the question in my mind is, and I don't know if this has been answered or not, will Shenmue 3 actually end the saga, or will there be a Shenmue 4 after that? I don't know. And I don't know if anybody knows, and we won't know really until either Yu Suzuki gives us an answer, or we play Shenmue 3 and find out how that ends. Thanks everyone for watching. See y'all next time.